And now it's my privilege to turn this over to our own Reverend Philip, who is our inspirational speaker for this day.
Thank you very much, and God bless to all of you. We're going to discuss the sixth principle of the Spiritualist Declaration of Principles, which is, we believe the highest morality is contained in the Golden Rule. Whatsoever you would that others should do unto you, do you likewise unto them. I know we discussed this a short time ago. Reverend Thomas brought to us some of the different versions of the Golden Rule. And they draw this from the Gospel of Matthew, particularly during his Sermon on the Mount. And in verse 12, which I believe is, which if I recall is where this is found, he begins with, therefore, all things, which suggests that this, what we call the Golden Rule, influences everything that we do, not just how we treat others or how we would like to be treated, but everything that we do. And then it closes with, for this is the law and the prophets. Now, typically, if we were thinking of the law associated with the Bible, we're thinking the commandments, the doctrine, and such. But being spiritualists, this would be, I feel, more in line with nature, the laws of nature. For this is the law of nature. And the prophets were messengers. I also want to point out that Jesus was of the Jewish faith. And I'm assuming that he taught from the Talmud. Hopefully I pronounced that correctly. If not, please forgive me. And the equivalent in Jewish teaching is, what is hateful unto thee, that do not do unto another. This is the whole law. All the rest is commentary. Now, one of the things I like about this is that, they say this is a summary. This is what you really should pay attention to. Is what, again, it's what we're doing to others based on what we feel of ourselves. And then everything else is commentary. It's, everything else is an explanation of that. I'm slowly working to something that I was impressed with this morning. And I believe Reverend Thomas mentioned this one here from Confucius. What I do not wish men to do to me, I also wish not to do to them, or do to men. It's a very simplified version. Another one that was used, and this one is very, very esoteric. The superior man seeks to develop the admirable qualities of men and does not seek to develop their evil qualities, whereas the inferior man does the opposite of this. Many of our favorite movies are based on that. The Karate Kid is what comes to mind. The Golden Rule is in a variety of fashions. But this last suggestion here, which is what I'm going to rest on, I don't know if I heard this, or rather, I should say, I don't know if I read this as part of my research, or if this came to me from one in life's other rooms. But it goes like this: do not ask of another what you would not do yourself. For me, this is takes us it takes us to before the act. Whereas a lot of them were about the act, do not do unto others. You're already doing something, so don't do to them what you wouldn't want them to do to yourself. But with this, it's, don't ask anybody to do what you would not do yourself. It's almost as though it is appealing to the power that resides within us. How often have we asked someone to do a favor for us because we really didn't want to do it? I know I've done it once or twice. I try not to do it anymore, but I've done it once or twice. And I'm sure others have as well. But it gets us right there to before we act. And that's what I like about it. Like I said, I don't know if I read this or if this was part of my teachings, part of what I was being taught this morning before awakening. Don't ask. It gives you something to think about. Don't ask someone to do what you won't do. What are your thoughts about that? Rachel, do you have any thoughts about that? Don't ask others to do what you would not do yourself.
Well, I think that my mind goes to the central principle in this rule. My belief is that we are all one. We're part of a whole. We're connected. We're branches of the same tree. And so whether you're asking someone to do something that you wouldn't want to do, or whether you are doing something hurtful, that action comes back to you in karma or in unintended consequences of that action in the moment. So, for instance, if I snap at my partner out of my own stress or whatever, well, that's going to create the Buddhist definition of karma, a perpetuation, right, of that energy. Most likely, it's going to come back to me in his impatience with me or his hurt towards me, or the hurt that I created coming back at me. And it just grows, it kind of creates this energy. So, and the same seems to happen with the Bible's sin, which some call a separation from God and others. And I've thought on these sinful acts sometimes, and I've thought, they really contain the consequence right in it, right in the sin. The consequence is there. It separates them from God or others, right? Every sin separates you from God and or others. So anyway, that's what comes to my mind with the don't ask something that you wouldn't want to do yourself. I think in some form or another, there's an unintended consequence. And I think, the more people feel good because of your actions, you reap that benefit too.
Exactly. I like that you said your belief, because it gives a sense of individuality, and that idea of separation. Yeah, every time we do something wrong, we separate ourselves. But typically it's we separate ourselves from them because we perceive it as being wrong. Typically we are already practicing do unto others which you would have them do unto you. I find it difficult to imagine Reverend Thomas doing something to me that he doesn't like. He's going to greet me the same way as he greets anybody else, without thought. And we do this automatically. It's just, but when we get to the questioning part, it seems that it's that forethought. It's not that it forces us to think, but we consider. So, Reverend Thomas, do you have any thoughts you'd like to add with this? I know you were reaching for the unmute button earlier.
Yeah, there's this is such a great discussion, and I guess to me it speaks to understanding the laws of cause and effect, of understanding it. It speaks to our ability to how we contribute to the unfolding of creation. And it's a simplified way of describing, providing a guideline. One of my mentors was when praying about what to do in a situation, she was given, when in doubt, do the loving thing, would be another way of approaching that. For the people that get confused about do unto others as you would have them do unto you, or that are disappointed that people aren't being nice to them when they were being nice to them, they didn't reciprocate that. The approach is unconditional. If you put conditions on it, that I'll be nice to you if you be nice to me, that's a transactional kind of a thing, and you're missing the whole point. The whole point is you do that because it's the right thing to do. You treat others in a good way because it is the right thing to do. And one of the tests of that would be, if somebody treated me that way, that would be a good thing. It's one of the ways of testing that. But I think, as you rightly pointed out, that there are nuances that you must take into account also. If you really care about another person, the way that you would want to be treated maybe not be precisely the way that they would interpret as a good thing. So there are nuances to this, that if our intention is to do no harm, if it's our intention to do that which is life affirming and positive, then we're going to keep growing and be more sensitive, more to the very thing that that is would be interpreted as a good thing for the other person. And I'll close with, if I have this right, that the legend about the Buddha, the way that the Buddha died, was food poisoning. He was invited into the house of a very poor man, and he served him rotten meat because it's all he had. And the Buddha saw that and recognized the problem but rather than insult this man, he ate the meat. And whether that's a true story or just a legend, it kind of demonstrates the point to an extreme, perhaps, but it demonstrates the point. Thank you, Reverend Philip.
Thank you. God bless. As you were sharing that, something came to mind, and I'll tell you a short story. When I was working, our lead person would come around to us each morning and give us our assignments. And he came to me one morning and he said, "Philip, I need you to move this order up, and I need you to get this order ready. And these two orders here need to go out before noon." And I stopped and I looked at him. And before I give you my response to that, what I said, I'm going to ask you, what is wrong with that picture? And think about what I said earlier. The problem with yes, Sharon.
Those were things he didn't want to do.
Very close. Very close. Anyone else? So I said to him, "Cameron, why don't you try asking me to do this?" "Well, why?" "Because if you ask someone, you're more likely to accomplish what you need to accomplish without making them feel very tall." So when he came around the next morning, he comes up to me and he says, "Philip, could you move these orders up and try and get them ready to be shipped by noon?" And then I asked him, I said, "Did you notice the difference between today and yesterday?" He felt better about asking as opposed to telling. I feel that one of the important things to some of these principles, especially when you get into philosophy, it's not necessarily getting something done or being nice to someone so that they'll be nice to you. It's more along the lines of appealing to them in a fashion that allows them to feel good about themselves and about you. Not saying that any of the other versions of the golden rule are incorrect, because they're not. But, words are important, and the positioning of words, the words chosen, convey a lot. You can pour more emotion into certain words than you can with other words. For instance, you can pour more emotions into "please, could you do this?" than you can in "do this for me." You can pour more emotions through certain words. And sometimes I feel that that's important. That's one of the things that those in life's other rooms are bringing to me, as with Rachel's message to Beth. When I awaken from sleep, I've got these thoughts in my head when the alarm starts to go off and I hit the snooze button once or twice. That is their time. They take me to school, and what I'm learning is that emotions are key to share them, and there are a variety of ways to share them. Sandy, do you have any comments that you might like to share? Okay.
It's very, very interesting. It kind of took me back to there was a time in my life when I was a boss, and I had never been one before, so it was scary. But I also, and I'm not, I sound like I'm tooting my horn, but I never wanted them to do anything I wouldn't do myself. And I made it very clear. And many times those sleeves went up and I was right in there with them. And I felt like it was the only way to be. It was the only way to be. And I don't know why, but I was thinking about it because the interesting concept about that was that I was in middle management, and the people above me never ever concerned themselves with anything like that. But so, they would come down on you, but I couldn't pass it on to my people. I couldn't do it. So I think it helped create a very harmonious relationship with the gals that worked for me. So what you were saying just really validated that memory for me. They were good people, good people. Yeah. Thank you.
Excellent. You said something very important there. And what she said was harmony.
Mhm.
The golden rule, no matter which version you subscribe to or which version you prefer, the purpose of the golden rule, is it sums up the law, and the law is about harmony. The law of nature is about harmony. As Andrew Jackson Davis put it, nature conspires towards harmony. And I recommend that we all join that particular conspiracy. You have anything you'd like to offer, Beth?
I wish I did, but I am battling a really nasty sinus headache right now. It's kind of turned the brain cells off. But
I
thanks
can
for
relate. Would anyone else like to add to this?
I will share a real life story that maybe demonstrates some of this. Certainly from a karmic kind of a standpoint. A few years ago, Beth and I took a trip to Gatlinburg, Tennessee, to go hiking up in there. And on our return home, getting out of that part of Tennessee, there's a lot of 2-lane roads before you get to an interstate. And we finally got to the interstate, and we had left early, and it was we wanted to have breakfast, so we stopped and we did that at Country Kitchen, I believe. But as we were coming out from having our breakfast, a young man approached our car, and Beth quickly got in the car, and across the car, I spoke to him, and he was very apologetic and everything, and said he hated to ask, but and that he tells me that the story about his wife was driving the car and she hit a pothole and it ruined the tire, and they pulled in here and they called around and they can get a used tire, and they pooled all of their money and all they had. They were $20 short or something in order to get this tire. And I could see down the parking lot, this car stuffed full of, clothes and kids' toys and things, and a couple of little kids, and this young woman sitting in the back seat, entertaining the children. So I poked my head in the car, and I seldom carry cash. I just didn't have any. And Beth usually does. I asked her, and she's very suspicious of these kinds of things. Her knee-jerk reaction was, no, I don't have any money. I don't have any money, And so I went out and I apologized. I said, I'm sorry, we just don't have any cash. And so he went back to his car. And so in pulling out of the parking lot, we had to go around and drive right by where they were parked. And in that short space of time, she starts asking me about it. And I start telling her what, the evidence that I saw that would give me think this is legitimate, and all of that. So by the time we get around there, she gives me $20 and says, yes, let's help them. She can now see the car and the children and everything. And it was just the right thing to do. And he's on the phone. He's trying to reach someone. They were traveling. They had been visiting, and they were traveling back home across the state. Anyway, and so we pull up, and I said, we found $20, and you're welcome to it, and he was very grateful and thankful. So we get on the interstate, and 15 minutes later, at 75 miles an hour, and I've never had this happen before, the car quits running at 75 miles an hour, just, and my engine quits in our car. And we pull off to the side of the road, and it won't crank, it won't start, it won't do anything. And we end up researching with the cell phones the symptoms, and the dashboard had given us a code or an indication that led us to identify what it was. And as it turns out, the gas pedal is actually an electronic module that feeds the computer. It's not a mechanical device on newer cars any longer. And that was the problem. We were a few miles or more from an exit, and we checked out on the map where we were, and then we called the nearest town and talked to a man at the parts store. And so anyway, we head there, and to shorten all of this long story, that man at the parts store, the car did start after it set a while. The car would run again, and we made it. We were able to drive. When it would have this problem, you could only go 40 miles an hour, 45. He went out of his way, bent over backwards, made phone calls all over the place, and he just works in this parts store, And he finally contacted a dealer in a town about 40 miles away, and they had the part. And so they held the part for us, and we bought some tools, and I don't know, he helped us in so many ways. But we went there, we got the part, we pulled into a cemetery, and in the very back part of it was a lot of grass and everything. We pulled over, and 15 minutes later, I had it replaced, and we went on the road. And it probably only added an hour or so to our journey. But the difference was this person bending over backwards, going out of their way to try to help us made all the difference. I mean, that could have been a disaster. That could have been tow trucks. That could have been having to get a motel overnight. Could have been, and for under $100 in an hour's time, we journeyed right on home, and it was really not a big deal. And I like to reflect on moments like that and connect the dots that, we made a decision here and we had an experience there. And I think they're connected. So that we pay attention to those things and we appreciate that every action we have has a consequence. Every action. It's not a punishment, but it's a consequence. And so anyway, I'll end it there and not drag this out any longer.
Yeah. Reverend Thomas makes a very good point with this story, and that is, on average, the majority of people in the world are more than happy to help. They're more apt to do the right thing. And, just a little sidetrack here. Justice is all about what's fair or the right thing. And that is what a lot of this is about. With the golden rule, whether it's do unto others as you would have them do unto you, or do not ask of another what you would not do yourself. It's all about that harmony. The once you think about how this is going to come back to you, you've added something different. It's about the way life flows. And I will say, God bless with that. Thank you for allowing me to share.